Adjusting the gears on your mountain bike can seem a little bit tricky, but honestly it's really simple as soon as you know all the components on a derailleur. It's also a great skill to learn because you're going to need to adjust your gears in time, and also means you can help your friends out as well. Now in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to do that on a Shimano derailleur, but the principle remains the same whatever brand you have. Okay, so before we make any adjustments, let me just explain to you the layout of a rear derailleur. Now in my hand here is, I think it's Neil's old derailleur. It might be crash damaged, it's a bit scuffed up and it's a bit dirty. This is a Shimano DL XT. It might be more expensive than the one you have, but it has the same basic functions and features. Now starting at the top here, you have the bolt that mounts it to the bike. Now this can be a 4, a 5, or sometimes a Torx, depending on the particular model or the year model you have. Typically it's a 5. Next up you have the parallelogram part. Now this is a sprung cage. Now you have this on all derailleurs, and this fundamentally is what enables the derailleur to move and shift the chain between those sprockets. Next up you have the sprung lower cage. This is the lower part of the derailleur here. I'm just going to turn it around so you can see this, and you've got 2 wheels on this. These are known as pulley wheels, guide wheels, or sometimes even as jockey wheels. Now these are essentially the same on all derailleurs, and this sprung cage simply moves backwards and forwards so it can take up the slack in the chain, and also enable it when you're in those bigger gears or the bigger sprockets for the chain to be able to stretch and basically compensate for that. Now on some derailleurs like this one, you'll see a clutch. The telltale sign of that is you'll have a little lever right here where you can turn it on and flick it off. It's a non-essential thing. It helps keep your chain on and make your bike quieter, but it doesn't affect the performance of changing gears. And accordingly, it's not something that we're going to look at in this video. Now, the 3 points of adjustment that you really have are the limit screws and the B screw. The B screw, if we deal with that one first, that adjusts the gap between the top of the guide wheels and the bottom of your cassette. The reason you need to make that adjustment is sometimes you might have a cassette and the biggest tooth will be a 42, some might be a 51 like I have on this bike here. Accordingly, the derailleur has to be set at a slightly different height in order to do its job properly. So once you've done that, you never really need to adjust it again. And then there's the limit screws. These simply set the maximum limits a derailleur can move within, over the small sprocket or over the large sprocket. Of course, if you have it in the wrong place on the large sprocket, there's a chance that your chain can hop into the spokes. So it's really key to make sure that you have those limit screws adjusted correctly. And they can also, if you've not got them adjusted correctly, just interfere with the indexing of your gears. Now, if you wonder what indexing is, that's simply the term that's used to refer to 1 click per gear. 1 gear, 1 gear, 1 gear, and so forth. The final thing that you'll see on all derailleurs is where the cable comes in. So if you look at the one on my chainstay on my bike here and you look back at this one in my hand, you can see how it works. The outer hose comes into the back here and then is simply secured on this arm on the inside of the derailleur. And there you go. They're the fundamental parts of a rear derailleur, and they're all pretty much the same. Okay, so now it's time to get a rear derailleur indexed. Fundamentally, there are only a few things you need to be doing. The first one is to make sure the derailleur is straight and securely fastened to the bike. The next one is to adjust those limit screws. So we're going to take a close look at doing that. And the final one is making sure you have the correct cable tension. Once you've got those 3 simple things sorted out, your gears will work like a dream. Now before you start the process, you obviously want to make sure that the derailleur is in good enough condition to work on and that your cable passes freely within the outer cable. Just give it a run through the gears, and regardless of them being indexed, you should feel if there's any additional friction. If there is, then you might want to replace that. Okay, before we start making adjustments, you're just going to make sure your bike is in the correct gear first. So shift down until you're in that smallest sprocket at the back. That is your highest gear. Now at the bars, you're going to be using your finger to do that. So shift it until you're in that gear, and then you want to wind the barrel adjuster back in towards the shifter. So first up, let's move on to getting the limits adjusted. Now if you've got a clutch on your derailleur, it will definitely help you and benefit you if the clutch is actually switched off. Mine already was then, I was just reaching to check. And then you're going to need an Allen key or a screwdriver depending on what your derailleur is. This one takes a 2mm, yours may well be a Phillips or a crosshead style screwdriver. Now if you position yourself with line of sight, what you're looking for is the rear derailleur, both wheels here, to be lined up completely in a vertical line underneath that sprocket. Now if you manipulate the lower cage down here, you can actually get a really good position to see here. Now just note how vertical that is. If the derailleur itself is actually bent, then you're going to need to adjust that. Now note, as I make an adjustment here, if I'm turning this screw clockwise on the limit screw, you can see the derailleur moving inboard, and anti-clockwise it moves outboard. If it's too far inboard, you'll never get that small gear or the high gear. And if it's too far the opposite way, then the chain can jump off the top accidentally and take off your paint or get jammed in there. So it's a good reason to make sure it's properly lined up. It's really that simple. Of course, getting the vantage point is key, and that is why you should sit at the back of the bike here. Now next, you want to repeat this with the bigger sprocket, but there are a few little factors here. The first one is, if you have massive tyres on your bike, it can be really hard to get a good line of sight. If that's the case, then you might want to consider removing your rear tyre. The next thing to take into account is if you have your cable on the derailleur already, or if the cable is in place. Now you can either manipulate the derailleur into the position, which means you don't need the cable, or you can use your gears if your cable is mounted. I'm just going to manually manipulate my derailleur there. So just carefully move the derailleur and spin the pedals around. Obviously you have to make careful your face doesn't hit the tyre if you're doing what I'm doing here. And there we go. So it's in the biggest sprocket. Now I'm just going to hold the derailleur cage here so I can see. As I explained before, line of sight is absolutely key to this. It can be really tricky, and I've got my eye right at the edge of the tyre here, but I can see what I'm doing. So same as adjusting the other limit screw, you want to make sure that that derailleur cage is vertically underneath that. Now it can take a bit more messing around here to get that just right, but once you have, it's the key to good shifting. It's doubly important at the top here though. If it's not enabling the derailleur to travel high enough, you're not going to get into that bigger gear, which you're going to need on the steep climbs. But more importantly, if it overshifts, then you can create damage. You could strain the derailleur or snap it. You could snap the mech hanger. You could jam the chain behind the cassette in between the spokes, which can break the chain, and it can also break spokes. So do take care with that. Take a bit of time, there's no rush, and you'll get it just right. The next adjustment you need to be making is the B tension, or that B screw. Now this basically pivots the derailleur slightly, and it enables the top jockey wheel there just to be spaced apart from the biggest of the cassette sprockets there. Now it's really important to get this right, because you just won't get clean shifting if it's wrong, basically. Now the height does depend on the mech and the cassette combination you have. If you've got up to 11 speed and you've got a 42 tooth as your biggest, you're looking at between a 5 and 6 millimeter gap between that top jockey wheel and the top of the cassette rings there. And if you've got up to, I think it's a 46, you need between 8 and 9 millimeters. However, if you've got 12 speed, things are a little bit more simplified. You don't have to remember those numbers. If you look on the reverse of the mech, you'll actually see a little mark in there. It could be a groove, or it could be a painted mark like on this XTR one here. And all you have to do is go around the non-drive side of the bike, and you have to use that B screw clockwise to make it move down, anti-clockwise to make it move back up, to get basically to line up that line or the groove with the sprockets. It's really quite simple, but it can be hard to see if you've got a big grime on it like this one has. But look closely and you can see it. Now note, just watching the derailleur moving up and down as I do this, you can see exactly what's going on. And like I say, with line of sight looking around the back here, I can see at this point it's perfectly in line. So that is the correct height for your B screw. Okay, so you've got your B tension adjusted and you've got your outer and inner limit set. The last thing you need to master is just getting your cable tension right, and then that way we can get the indexing dialed in. Now, what you're going to need to do is just undo the cable clamp. On this derailleur, it's a 4 millimeter, and it's just located at the back here. I'm just going to carefully undo that. And then what you're wanting to do is pull the cable through, make sure it's orientated correctly in there. Now it does differ on some derailleurs, but you can clearly see the orientation of the way it moves around the bolt, and there's a little groove for it to slot into. Now you want to pull this through until it's taut, never tight. If it's too tight, it's going to be very unlikely you're going to get back down into this sprocket. And you can even see by pulling it how much of a difference it makes, because it's quite a light action system. So like I said, you just want to pull it to be taut. And then you want to nip the bolt up to tighten that. Now sometimes when you're tightening it, you might want to just, as it gets tighter, just hold the cage of the derailleur just to resist it moving. There we go. Okay, so now the cable, as you can see here, I can still move it by hand slightly, so it's taut and not tight. That's the key. Okay, and now for the last step, the most important one, is to make sure your gears are indexed. Of course, this is the correlation of one click at the shifter giving you one gear when you pedal. Now we're going to start with it in this smallest sprocket because that's where we've made those last adjustments. And then we're going to pedal it along slightly in the work stand here and apply one click at the lever. Now with any luck, that might correlate to one click giving one gear shift. And it has perfectly actually. And then back down again. The idea is to make sure the first 3 or 4 sprockets you've got perfect shifting between them. So I'm going to set it up to show you what happens if it's not quite right. If for example there's too much tension here, it's actually going to go up 2 or 3 gears instead of just going up the 1 gear. So I'm just going to put an extra bit of tension on. And you'll see when I change gear, it will jump up more than 1 sprocket. So it wants to jump 2 there. There you go, and it's actually gone up. Now it's just 1 click. So although it goes back down again, just doing 1 click and it jumps up 3 times. There we go. So in this case, I want to make sure that I take some of that cable tension back off again. All it is tweaking that cable tension. You can do this 1/4 of a turn at a time until you've got it just right. 1 gear, 1 click, all the way up the cassette. And it should be relatively smooth shifting up and down. Like I said, if there's not enough cable tension, it's not going to jump up a gear, so you need to apply some more cable tension. If there's too much cable tension, it's going to jump up too many gears. So just experiment with that at the lever end there where you have the barrel adjuster on there, and then you'll get your gears absolutely mastered. Well, that's the basics of how you adjust a Shimano rear derailleur to get that perfect shifting. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it's the same principle whether you've got an Acera X level derailleur or all the way through to an XTR. They all work in exactly the same way. So just take the time to try and understand your derailleur a bit and it will make adjusting it much easier. As always, thanks for hanging around on GMBN Tech. We've got loads of cool free content for you, so be sure to subscribe if you've not already done that, because there is so much information out there and it's all free for you as well. And our Instagram page also has loads of cool stuff, so give that one a follow. As always, thanks for hanging around.